can we get an ATIP application done and get a sense of that while she's still surviving? Was it that it was put in but never pursued? Did he withdraw it? Like, what happened there, right? So that's something which I would say we should be exploring a little bit. And then that last point, the point that you were making, Julie, that how do we explain this behavior of a survivor who's saying that, yes, I'm surviving and I want to live with this abuser still because this abuser is changing his pattern and I feel like I can still make a life. How do you make a sense of that pattern for an officer? I think the only way to make any logical submission on that would be based on what we see in the ATIP. If he is keeping her without status and precarious because he wants to control her, then that's in itself an evidence of controlling behavior that we can submit. Saying this is what this person is doing to her. And she doesn't have anyone else, she's isolated, so she chooses to live with him, but he is keeping her in this precarity because it benefits him. And he has children with her, but he still doesn't want to. So then we have a case to put it. Maybe we don't. Maybe he actually has never sponsored her and it was just a conversation. But I think it is important for us to explore that angle a little bit. That's the only thing which I feel like did not come out. Or maybe it came out, but you guys did not talk about it.
We talked about it just a little bit, but not really in the same context. But in terms of like, that brought up to me, not what you were saying so much, or should have, but in terms of if the right way forward for her is a refugee claim, other immigration options, that's a big subjective fear argument.
Yes.
And so when I was thinking about evidence, thinking about texts that she thought she was going to be in status for longer, but I suppose that can work for her precarity. So if he's saying, no, don't worry, baby, I put it in already, or things like that, then that can go to her precarity and then to his profile.
Absolutely. Actually, when we use this case study in other contexts, because right now we're just focusing on agency a little bit more, we do actually bring up her options could be three. She might be a refugee claimant, depending on the country of the origin and her circumstances. She would have to justify why so late, right? But she could potentially make a claim based on if other circumstances follow. She could be someone who would say, if there was a sponsorship application already in place, which is under process, we could actually go back to that sponsorship application and make an agency right now, tell this officer that there is a sponsorship breakdown happening, and we will save the fee, right? Because then we don't have to pay the agency fee because her sponsorship fee will get applied to the agency. So that sometimes is the fastest way of getting agency started. You let the officer know and you say, here is our bare minimum information to you, we will be sending you a full package later on. So that conversion happens. That does two things. It saves her money, for sure, but it also then shows good faith on her part, so that if he actually tries to pull the rug below her feet, she's the one who has already contacted them. Should I repeat this? I feel like some people are not getting this.
My question was kind of like that, and we had a similar file with a volatile and kind of ever-changing relationship where there was some still and we were considering because the spouse, I mean in this case it was the wife, kept wavering on the sponsorship, and we were considering, we ultimately didn't, putting both in the system at the same time, because she kept changing her mind on that, and because we were worried that she would, like you say, pull the rug out from under it. So I don't know if that's something that, if Zoya wants to continue with Mike in this case, that you would kind of preemptively be like, oh, this pattern doesn't look so good, why don't we do these both at the same time, so that it's already there.
So doing it both at the same time, we have done it. We have had clients for whom we have done it both at the same time, but not necessarily where we know what is happening to their relationship, in the situation where he filed for her sponsorship and then he abandoned her. And when we look for the file through ATIP, we know that the file is still pending, but he is nowhere to be found. So in those circumstances, we have chosen to also file an agency while this sponsorship application is also pending, and then at some point the officer will make a decision on either or, and she'll get landed on one of the two bases, mostly on agency, not on sponsorship.
Yeah, because by that time you've put in those factors that are kind of negative for this spouse.
For the sponsorship
together.
Absolutely. But for Zoya, what I'm thinking is that, what assumption is that it seems that this spousal sponsorship is not moving very far. Spousal or common law is not moving very far because it's been a number of years that they are together. So my conversation with Zoya would be, with the help of the support people who she would be supported from, thinking about where do you want to take yourself in terms of the relationship. He has more control over you because you are dependent on him for the status. There is a way to balance it out. You can make your decisions whether you want to stay with him, not stay with him, but the fact that it's taking so long has enough hardship for you to establish a hardship and make an agency grant. There is a police complaint. There is a pattern that can be established. So that breakdown of relationship, even if it has not happened right now, it might happen in near future. There is a clear agency ground that has been established because she is mother of these children who are Canadian born. So there is enough there, and plus, because she came here on a student permit, she actually has potential to establish herself because she can go back to school. She can start her life. So she definitely has some credibility with the immigration, which gave her a study permit to come into the country. So there is some background factors that we can look at. So therefore, starting with the ATIP would be where I would start. I want to see her study permit application. I want to see the sponsorship if it is sitting there. I want to see all of this. And while I'm trying to get all of this, I am making her work with a support person who is helping her with the survivorship and giving her the tools to either make a decision or think about what she wants to do next.
I have a question about evidence as well. So we were talking about, maybe you should get engaged in the community and volunteer and do that to support her agency. Since your clinic and ours as well is such a kind of an all-inclusive place, what role, if any, do other staff members or support people or even students at the clinic play in maybe submitting affidavits or support letters or things like that? And what are the optics of that, and how do you guys manage them?
So we do get something called confirmation of service letter from other people at the clinic. We don't get extensive evidence from them because the optics of it can be read wrongly, that you guys are actually, you're basically
gaining this agency.
Yeah, so it's a submission. It's the evidence that you're submitting, which is basically your own affidavit, right? So we take confirmation of service letter from them, which a bulk of it talks about the mandate of the clinic, and I think I was having that conversation with you during the break, that how the mandate of the clinic itself is pretty strong evidence in some of these cases, because we are very clearly established around, we only work with these parameters. This is what the mandate of the clinic, and a client needs to qualify this mandate to receive our services. So we feel those letters hold value from that mandate perspective more than the service that we are delivering, because the service we could be manipulating, but we can't manipulate our mandate, right? So to not introduce any kind of implicit bias into the evidence, we try to just get confirmation of service letter from the clinic, and we will get letters from doctors, teachers, or settlement workers at the school. If she's a religious person, then the church she goes to, the mosque she goes to, any family member, any person she is remotely or actively connected in doing some kind of community service or service for her, she's a lot of our mothers are not working, but they act as volunteers during lunchtime or get paid for that service. We call it noon aid in Ontario. I don't know if you guys have that system, but yeah, so getting all those confirmations that's what we go for. So I think one question that you had was really important in the morning, that sometimes these letters are so like not substantive and very shallow, right? And then you look at it and you struggle with it, right?
They're
so
like, I've known him for 3 years. He's a great neighbor. He should be a citizen.
Yeah, like you're like, this is so like, right?
Yeah.
So how do you work with something like that? That's a continuous struggle for us as well.
It depends on the client. Some of them, they'll be really good advocates for themselves, and they'll be able to bring me like all kinds of material, all kinds of support letters will be excellent. Others, you have to handhold a little bit, and I'll be like, tell me about your friend and how you know them. And we'll see what we can come up with, and you can get them to sign, right?
Yeah.
So it depends on the client.
Depends on the client. So one of the strategies that I have used is I keep on insisting on, I don't need a cookie cutter letter, I need a personalized letter. So I talk about personalization quite a bit during my conversations with my clients. If you will get me then they will say, can you write one for me? I'm like, if I write one for you, it will be a template letter. Do you want me to write a template letter for you? It has to be personal. It has to speak to who you are as a person. So I need something personal connection, which could be a simple personal connection, but I need something personal. So I try to push them in that direction as much as possible, and then to save myself from putting my own brain into that letter, I try to then work with a student. And I'll be like, work with her. At least I'm creating a distance from that, because I know what I want. And it will be really not useful if I will type it. It will be not useful because I'm going to type it from a what I need in my evidence perspective. So I actually have them work with a student and be like, gather the information, give her something, and then ask her to take it to the person and be like, are you satisfied with this? Or talk to the person who's writing this letter and say, can I talk to you for 5-10 minutes? It will be very quick. I need to gather some information.
And they'll tell a personal story.
Yeah.
But I'm always in that situation where I talk to them.
Yeah. I try to
sign it. Thank you.
I try to remove myself as much as possible, because especially for the kids, if there are, if you want the letters you're trying to get from the kids, you really want that language, right? Handwritten.
I've never written a kid's letter with my left hand, I'm proud to say.
Like literally the handwritten ones, I really try. You had a question here.
Yes, in the context of the best interest of the children, to what extent do you direct your mind to formalizing the rights and obligations for parenting and support of the kids? Because if part of the argument of significance of best interest of the children is what would happen to the children if mother was removed, it must be also a consideration of, well, mother, what's in place now in terms of parenting and support? So do you want to encourage her to seek legal advice on family matters and ultimately show as part of her application that there is an application in family court for formalizing, in that context, the best interest of the children is what support is there and what's the arrangement of parenting and custody?
So again, I mean, our location is we are very privileged when it comes to that, because we have family law lawyers who are on our team who will be hopefully working with her, or at least advise her on what to do. If she qualifies for legal aid, we will try to get her a legal aid certificate and get family law lawyer engaged. But what we do is usually get at least what we call in our practice SLA, so summary legal advice from our own lawyer on site. And we have family court support workers who will support her in bringing an application if we feel it is needed, which is like, let's do it quickly. We just need it for this application. Even if she doesn't want to pursue it, let's show that she is actually actively trying to get this sorted out.
Or if the client we have is far past the situation and has been removed from the abuser for a number of years, sometimes there is already a family court order in place, and I've used joint custody orders and included them in applications before, saying that the mother can't comply with this court order if she's removed and takes the children with her, But if she leaves them behind, then this is a hardship she will suffer, right? Psychologically, emotionally, and this is what the children will suffer if she's removed and complies with the order. So that's sort of an angle we take with that.
But we always would work with a family law lawyer and a criminal lawyer if there is a criminal case going on. So we would be working with all of them. The fortunate thing is, since I became the director of the clinic, I have been slowly, institutionally working towards people practicing in both areas rather than being just specialized in one. They can be specialized in area of law for file work, but I've been slowly going through a change management of our practice where everyone is able to do a little bit of all. So Yasmin was, last week doing a settlement conference in a family case. So what that is giving us is an added advantage of having a better understanding of family law and immigration because most of our cases have an overlap. Yeah. I mean, last year when I did the math, in 33% cases where we represented, we had to deal with both of the areas of law. So which is very high number for the size of practice we have because it's really very heavy on summary legal advice side of things. So 33% is actually really high number for that, those kind of files.
And it's heavy on the client because it's information overload.
Absolutely.
Having an immigration issue and a family issue.
Yeah, I mean, very recently we had an outside counsel approach us and say, she is, we also do a couple of drop-ins in this city. So we had a client show up at the drop-in clinic where an outside counsel referred her to us saying, she just needs to show that she's making an effort to get a custody order. That's all I need at this stage. Can you just help her quickly file a Form 8A in the family court? I don't need an order. I just need to show it to the member that she's making an effort because that's all this member is working for her. He's actively trying to get her. This was in a refugee context, so we do receive those kind of requests pretty frequently.
One last point to add to your question: if there is a support order in place for the children, like for child support, I also include that argument in there as well, that they will benefit from getting the money if they were to leave. So just.
But I think we're talking a lot about the positive stuff. Some of the negative stuff I can tell you is that some of these abusers will actually, in their affidavits in the family court, say she doesn't have a status, she's not a safe mother, she is not the rightful parent to be given custody. So we do see that play out as well. She will be removed. She might not even be able to stay here. So why would you give her more access depending on what the situation is? So we do see that play out as well. So it's not always so positive. It's we do have. So should we move on to the next case?
Yeah.
study?
So I'm wondering. So we have the room until 1, maybe a little bit afterwards, and we also have lunch. 1:30 we do? Okay. So maybe we could read the next case study and then do it over lunch. Does that work for you?
Oh yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So maybe we can all think about the next case study, then go get lunch,
and then we can wrap up after the case study. There is some extra material that we have, but I feel like most of the things in that material is getting.
We'll talk over lunch as long as.
Yeah, and it's getting covered as we are talking about as well. Sure. Here.
Oh, you want me to read it out?
Yes, please.
You can think about it.
All right, so this one's a little bit more in depth than the last one, so you'll have a bit more to work with. Maria is a 37-year-old woman from São Jorge in the Azores Islands, Portugal. She's engaged in a common law relationship with her spouse, David, and they have an 8-year-old daughter, Anna. The family came to Canada in 2015 to attend the anniversary party of one of Maria's relatives, and in the hopes of escaping significant financial hardship that they face in the Azores. Maria, David, and Daniela have been living in Canada ever since. While they were living in São Jorge, Maria and David experienced years of financial hardship, poverty, and economic vulnerability that was impossible for them to escape or overcome while living in their home country. Since living in Canada, Maria and David have successfully become economically self-sufficient. David has worked in heating, AC, and refrigeration, and as a general handyman. Maria has been employed on and off in stores and bakeries. She worked for Mr. James as a cleaner from the fall of 2015 to summer 2016. During this employment, Maria was repeatedly sexually assaulted by Mr. James, who exploited her precarious immigration status and vulnerability to harass, abuse, and exploit her. Maria felt she was unable to come forward or to take any steps to make the abuse stop because she was out of status in Canada and she could not risk her family being forced to leave. Maria had also had limited options for earning a reliable income due to her status. Other jobs that she had worked had paid her below minimum wage, and she was worried that she would be unable to find a job that reliably and adequately paid her so she could help support her family. Maria quit working for Mr. James after her employer threatened her daughter, and Maria could not tolerate having her daughter at risk. She also fears that Mr. James will perpetrate the violence against others. So, if she comes to you as a service provider, what are her options, and what areas would you focus on for each step of the process?